Alright, so as you can see, it's cold. As you can also see, we've done 25.5 miles today, 79% remaining charge. Did start in a heated garage and vaguely preconditioned it for about a whole 5 minutes, but I am basically at work. This isn't actually my work site, but this is exactly the same distance away from my route as going to work, and we are, 79% battery. We ran the heat pretty much the whole way. I turned the blower down a little bit for the video, try and get better audio quality, and notably the defrost basically the whole way. Cruise control set at speed limit and or around there, no issues in the very cold winter. I suppose I can do an update on this once I get home and my car has sat for quite some time in the very cold, but even then, I'll just set preconditioning for when I leave and it should be, medium warm when I get in. It will waste electricity functionally to heat itself before I leave and thereby reduce my overall range. But again, I've got more than 3/4 of a battery and I've got quite some time before I actually need to be charging, if you will. I know that a lot of people have the preconceived notion that electric vehicles just don't work in the cold or are, worse. Everybody that lives in this part of the state anyway, has had that thing where you go and try and start a car and it goes, and maybe it starts and maybe it don't. And I think that's where all that kind of comes from. People operate under the assumption that, oh, well, my battery doesn't work in the cold, probably yours doesn't too. And it's like, you guys, this thing has so much more battery than your auxiliary electronic system battery. It's so much more current that's available, even at ridiculously low temperatures. I've had this thing at -11 for 10 hours outside, and you set preconditioning, and yeah, you'll see some reduced power, but it's not enough to actively limit the vehicle in any kind of meaningful use case. Sure, at the absolute coldest, it wanted to do 65 instead of 70, and I think that was largely software, not the actual hardware. But 65 is the speed limit on the road that I was on, so what's the issue? And of course, as you drive it, it warms itself up, just through natural processes. If you use your phone really hard for a little bit, your phone gets warm. If you use your car really hard for a little bit, the battery gets warm. And then as a result, you can use more current out of it. They don't like the cold, so to speak. It's not meant to do that kind of thing, but it can, and it does, and it doesn't really make itself an issue. And yeah, you do see some slightly reduced range in combination with, the fact that you need to use electricity to heat the thing, and the fact that cold air has more air resistance than normal, 70-degree air. But it's not a real problem. Sure, if you're trying to cover multiple thousands of miles in a day or two, yeah, you're gonna have to pull off and charge more. But if you're commuting, which I think the overwhelming majority of miles is, save, guys like that, it doesn't matter. I've got, this one has about 150 miles range on a good day in the summer, give or take. It's a moving target, right? Like if I'm doing 45 miles an hour all day, I could probably do 200 miles, but nobody's doing 45 miles an hour all day. So highway speeds, 150 miles, something like that on a good day. Now, we do see a meaningful degradation in terms of range, but that's basically because I'm trying to keep myself warm and it's very cold and therefore very difficult to move through the air. The only reason you don't think about it at all with a gas car is there's a ton of waste heat thrown off it, and it doesn't take any meaningful amount of energy to move that waste heat from outside the car to inside the car. And then these don't have that kind of waste heat, which is why they're so efficient. But, you know, it's just the nature of them. And beyond that, this is a terrible example of what is to be expected of a typical electric car. It is -4 right now. It was -7 when I left. It is proper cold today here in Minnesota. And it's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, I have way more range than I need to get home. I can run this thing heated for probably 3 hours before I even remotely lower the battery charge to a point that it would be in any amount meaningful. And maybe I'll do a video on that at some point, but it's just so not a problem. And for whatever reason, there are so many news articles and people that are just like, oh, well, how does that thing work in the cold? And it's fine. It's honestly fine. There's no issue. Like, I don't know how to exclaim this further. I've been in -14 degrees on the dash. Like, it's been windy, it's been cold. I've left it outside for 10 hours plus, and I just get in and go home. Like, yeah, if I was trying to do 250 miles in a day, sure, I would have to stop at a fast charger, but I don't. I don't think people realize how little you drive. I've put over 2,000 miles a month on this car since we bought it. We bought it at 27,200 something miles, and congratulations, we put 22,000 miles on it. I haven't owned it a year, okay? You can do an absolute ton of driving without the need to plug into a fast charger. I've plugged into a fast charger a grand total of twice, and most of the time it wasn't even strictly necessary then. I just wanted to do it to be sure, you know? Like, we had a day where me and the wife carpooled, and I dropped her off and I went to work, and then I went to a fast charger for like 10 whole minutes because we had planned on going to another town that's like 3 towns over after, and meeting up another couple and hanging out with them for however long, and then going home. And I was like, it is kind of close. Maybe I'll just put, like, you know, a little bit of electricity in it. And I did, and it was whatever. And then people talk about, like, oh, well, you know, I think that the fast chargers and whatever else will be, you know, more expensive than gas anyway. It's like, no, are you kidding me? It's at worst about the same. Like, if you go to a really expensive fast charger, it's about the same. So just made it home, heat set like that. It's 10 degrees now-ish, give or take. I'm in the garage, so I expect that to climb. 50% battery remaining, 49.5 either way. I could sit in this car for quite some time yet. It says 51.3 miles traveled, approximately 3 or 4 miles of city, and then everything else is 60 mile an hour speed limit and 65 mile an hour speed limit, or there or thereabouts. No issues whatsoever in terms of usability for the winter. And now that I'm home, I'm gonna plug it in for about, well, I mean, it's probably gonna be plugged in until the end of time, basically, but if I plan on going out later, I'll have more than enough range to go do something. I mean, realistically, it'll add 7 kilowatts an hour at, you know, maybe the wife gets home in 2 hours, so we'll add 14 kilowatts, which is almost as much battery as I've used. At 50%, I should have used about 21 kilowatts. So I guess I'd have 7 kilowatts shy of a full battery, which is, I mean, almost nothing anyway. Like, who cares? Yeah, winter EV usage in Minnesota in proper cold is perfectly viable, regardless of whatever anybody else says. And this is about as much work as I gotta do. I gotta grab this, come over here, push that in, pull this off. A little bit more difficult with one hand unfree what for filming, but there it is. My commuter. And it commutes just fine. It even does medium length trips without too much difficulty. There, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. The thing costs almost nothing to run, and it's fun, honestly. Like, it fits my bias as well. I like smaller cars. I like rear-wheel drive cars. I like vehicles that are quick but not necessarily fast. And this is that. 0 to 60 is under 7 seconds. It's rear drive, which is entertaining on snowy, wintry days like today. And it's so cheap to run. I really genuinely can't. I'll have to elaborate further on how cheap it is to run, but it is shockingly cheap to run.